Morning, everybody. Liz Sharp here, as you know. Um, I've been a funeral director at Homes and Daughters for the last 27 years, and I'm based in Feltham now. I've carried out many funerals for St Richard's family members. I expect I've arranged about in excess of 1,500 funerals, which means I've met that many families too. This is a picture of me in my uniform, which many of you will have seen. That was only 2 years ago. And I have my fish sign on the door, which I can't say the Greek name at the moment. And it's a nice, tranquil environment to work in. And I have my own chapel here. And I work alone most of the time. The men come over when there's a funeral on, although they're not allowed in the office now. They have to wait outside, which is really sad. I'm going to focus on what the last year's been like rather than how I became a funeral director and how blessed I am and have been to have this unexpected career. This is all another story. How were things? I feel my profession is primarily a caring profession. It used to mean spending time with families at the time of the funeral arrangement, all through the days, the visits to the chapel and after the funeral, cups of tea and chats which often led away from their trauma and on to other things, so they'd leave on a better note, not so sombre. Sometimes families would hold back at first, saying, "Oh, you've heard it all before." I would assure them that that was not the case. Every family was different. Every death and every person who died was different. This seemed to give people the confidence to speak more freely about everything. But how are things now? Things are now so different. I try to speak for ages on the phone with people as I would have done face to face. I have to make them know that I'm able to spend time on the phone. It's not a rush of questions and answers. We cannot see each other's faces or body language, which used to be so important for me to judge how this person was coping. I do all the paperwork over the phone and the families come in and I meet them for a short time. This is mainly because it's hard to sit for over an hour with masks on talking. It's too hard. So the masks hide your expressions, which are so hard to do without looking at people's expressions. There's sometimes, for example, a lady who was leaning forward and her shoulders were shaking, and sometimes she was laughing and sometimes she was crying. It was hard to tell. There is great disappointment in people who cannot see their loved ones in the chapel of rest, and they can't be dressed, and the men are really upset about not being able to carry their mum or dad. So all these things, sometimes that people were trying to delay the funerals at first, hoping that the restrictions would be lifted so that they could do all the things they wanted and have the funeral they wanted. I compare myself to the midwife at the beginning of life. I am there for support at the end of that life. It's important now more than ever that people don't think that I'm too busy to give them time, and that trust and confidence is gained, that we care. There are people who find it hard if someone has died of COVID. They feel it means that people think that that person wasn't careful or didn't stick to the rules, or that they themselves didn't do enough for that person to stop them getting it. People are keen to make it clear that the person caught the COVID whilst in hospital. One lady in her 40s, she had COVID unknowingly and gave it to her husband, who was only 63, and he died, and she's blaming herself for that death. That's very hard. So I'm working in a different way, technically, more scanning an email, copying and pasting and attaching and emailing and all that sort of thing, picture tributes and technological skills. webcasts and everything are more challenging now. The sad thing is the teamwork that we all used to have. The men would come in for tea and coffee. We'd talk about the funeral ahead and the person, and have our camaraderie. We were a team from the start to the finish of the funeral. And those times that I think it's important that the men know who they're carrying about that person. It's also hard for them to work at 2 meters apart. I was dismayed at first lockdown when people were saying things like, I bet you're rubbing your hands together and you're all going to be okay. And actually not. That's not true for both. We are the 4th emergency service going to disasters and situations to collect people which aren't always good. And call outs at weekends and evenings, then to work even with not much sleep, all frontline working. But we as an industry need to keep safe so that the funerals can go ahead. I have a guilt feeling like you hear survivors have of a disaster or a major accident. It's that I have not had to stop working, and my life has not changed in that way. Financially, I'm okay, and I have something to go out and go to and a routine. I don't like this feeling, but I just have to think that it's us funeral directors. We're the ones who have carried out the 100,000 funerals, and so we have to be happy that we've been able to do that. And I have a Bible reading from Matthew chapter 25 verse 40. And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of my brethren, you have done it unto me. And that's how I think of my families, that whatever I do for them as much as I can, and give them as much attention and detail, then I'm doing that for Jesus. So anyway, I'm hoping to be in the Zoom meeting after the service in case you have any questions. So bye for now.